Hello, class. So today we will look at the different approaches to tourism, hospitality, and event research. Because when we want to do any academic research, there are so many different ways to go about it, and we have to decide the most suitable way to answer the research problem. So when we talk about approaches, we are looking at paradigms. Paradigms is like philosophy. What is the philosophy you adopt when you are trying to do this academic research? Yeah, and we will look at the positivism and interpretivism paradigms. These are two complete opposites of each other, where positivism depends on numbers, whereas interpretivism depends on words or speeches. Yeah, and we will also look at the reasoning behind the scientific investigation that we do. Either we do inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning. Okay, and then the last part of the class will look at the ethics related to any research. But of course, when we look at it in the context of our context, it will be within the context of tourism, hospitality, and event research. So hopefully by the end of the class, you will be able to explain the differences between positivist and interpretive paradigm, and also try to explain the logical method in social science theory and research, and explain the ethical issues involved when we do tourism, hospitality, or event research. Okay, so when we are doing research, we're talking about what area that we are looking at, and this area depends on the discipline that we come from. Okay, so for example, within the context of tourism, hospitality, and event, it would be a social science discipline. Yeah, and under social science, there are so many disciplines that we must also look at. It can be marketing, it can be management, it can be sociology, it can be finance. So there are so many. Okay, so sometimes when we do research, we cannot just do one specific. We cannot just take one specific discipline. It has to be like a multidisciplinary. Yeah, we take the approach or the knowledge from multiple discipline. So multidisciplinary is a research from a number of discipline and that we can use. Yeah, for example, sustainable tourism. Sustainable tourism, as you know, is the in thing today, and everybody has to touch the aspect of sustainability in whatever research that they do. Okay, so when we do sustainable tourism research, for example, it has to be understood from the economic perspective, the environment perspective, as well as the social perspective. So that makes it multidisciplinary. Multi means many. Okay, and then there's also the cross-disciplinary traditions. Cross-disciplinary means we look at issues, theories, concepts, or methods which are common to more than one discipline. Yeah, for example, how to market a homestay business, or how to market a hotel, or how to market an event. So there's an issue of marketing there that you have to understand. There's probably also an issue of management. Okay, an issue related to finance. Yeah, so all whatever that whatever the issues or theories or concepts that are shared among many disciplines, then this makes it cross-disciplinary research. And then there's also the tradition called interdisciplinary. Interdisciplinary refers to subfields of research which do not fit neatly into any particular discipline. For example, IR 4.0. Yeah, if you remember, IR 4.0 is a really new concept, but an important concept. It relates to the need to become digitalized. It relates to the need to become more technologically advanced. Yeah, So IR 4.0 is a new concept that does not really fit into the traditional knowledge or traditional concept, but it is important. So we have to take it into consideration, because this particular concept applies to every discipline. When we talk about marketing, there's an aspect of IR 4.0 in there. When you're talking about management, there's also an aspect of IR 4.0 in there. When you're talking about finance, the same thing. Okay, so that makes it interdisciplinary. Tourism, hospitality, and event are basically social science. Yeah, social science means it has to deal with people, and it has to include so many different dimensions of life. Yeah, so for example, we have to look at this industry, the tourism, hospitality, and event industry, from the economic point of view. We can look at it from the geography point of view, sociology, psychology, ecology, marketing, planning, management, law, history, sports and recreation, and many more. Okay, so because each one of these contribute towards the main towards the industry that we're looking at. Yeah, for example, economy. Basically, what the industry you are in is about business. Yeah, you need tourism generates income to your destination. Hospitality industry also generate income to the destination, employ people. Yeah, event also employ people, generate income to the local economy. So that's why it's related. Yeah, there's also an issue of supply and demand when we look at these industries. Okay, and then we can also look at tourism, hospitality, and event from the customer behavior point of view. This is where we need psychology. Okay, so when we learn about tourist trip or tourist behavior or tourist decision making, these are all about the psychology, about motivation, about satisfaction, about internal, yeah, something that happens within an individual. So that's why it relates to psychology. But we think about it, each of these, economy, psychology, generates provides only a partial rather than a holistic view of the whole issue. Yeah, partial means half or just a little bit. Holistic means a lot, like the entire thing. Okay, so no one discipline can explain tourism. No one discipline can explain hospitality, and no one discipline can explain event. There's always a combination of disciplines. Okay. So this is what Grauburn and Jafari said in 1991. No single discipline alone can accommodate, treat, or understand tourism. It can be studied only if disciplinary boundaries are crossed and if multidisciplinary perspectives are sought and formed. Okay, so again, when I say tourism, I'm not just saying tourism per se. Tourism, in this class, we use it as an umbrella term to include hospitality and events as well. Okay, so it applies to all of your, whatever the discipline that you're looking at, it applies equally. Yeah. Now, positivist versus interpretive paradigm. Okay, this paradigm again means philosophy. Philosophy, or the basis or the views of what we are doing in that research. Okay, so there are some big words that you have to just be introduced to here. You don't have to remember it because at this level you're not really looking into the issue of ontology, epistemology, or methodology. But basically, ontology means the nature of reality, yeah, the phenomenon. Okay, uh, epistemology is the relationship between the researcher and the subject or the object. Okay, because in each of the positivist and interpretive paradigm, the ontology is different, the epistemology is different, and the methodology also, consequently, will be different. Yeah. So, for example, if we are talking about the relationship between researcher and subject or objects in epistemology, in positivist, the epistemology would be researcher is an outsider. We will look at this more and more in detail later on. Is an outsider looking objectively into the thing he or she is studying. Okay, that's an example. And for interpretivism, it would be the researcher can be either an outsider or insider of the phenomenon that he or she is looking at. Okay, so that's what these words are meant, and because of the specific ontology epistemology that you use to do your research, the methodology that you should adopt will also be according to that. Yeah. Um, for quantitative, for positivist paradigm, as I mentioned earlier, positivistic means it depends on numbers. So this makes it quantitative. Yeah, quantitative. On ontological basis, positivist paradigm is being organized by universal laws and truths. Human behavior is predictable, can be shaped and controlled, and deductive approach is used to research it. Okay. So the epistemological basis of positivist paradigm is things are objective and value free, follow strict procedures, and can be replicated. Remember, the epistemology is the researcher being an outsider. Why? Because the whole investigation has to be objective. That means the researcher just do the fieldwork, get the data, analyze, and make inference based on that data. The researcher does not put his or her own thought or idea into the value, the data that he or she is getting. Okay, so that makes it objective. Yeah, that's why it can be replicated because it followed a strict procedure, and so future researcher, if they use the same methodology, they can replicate the results. Okay, so that is what positivism paradigm propose. Okay, so we do this for in terms of methodology that can be used. It normally is depending on using controlled experiments and repeatable procedures, or basically quantitative method that uses numbers as its representation. Potential areas for research, if we use positivistic paradigm, we can study consumer behavior. What makes people travel, for example? What motivates people to stay in a certain type of hotel, for example? What makes people choose a concert over orchestra, for example? Yeah. So that's consumer behavior. It relates to motivation, it relates to decision making, and things like that. Yeah. Whereas we can also use positivism paradigm where in research relating to environmental impact, because we need the number. Yeah. We can also use it for tourism forecasting and modeling, economic impact, marketing research studies, and hospitality satisfaction studies. Okay. So all of these areas that I have mentioned here could use positivist paradigm because they need numbers to make sense of the issues or aspects relating to it. Yeah, so that's why they can be studied using positivism paradigm. Interpretivism or interpretive paradigm is the philosophy of that relates to meanings of words or speeches. So when we do this, when we adopt interpretive paradigm, we are looking at, in terms of ontology, we're looking at multiple realities. That means there's no just one truth. Anything is possible. So that's why multiple realities. And that's why we use inductive approach to do the research. Okay, the epistemology of it is that social actors acting in social setting, and so they have subjective relationship. Remember, the epistemology for positivistic is objective, yeah, whereas here is subjective. Why subjective? Because anything is possible. It has multiple realities, right? And then consequently, in terms of the methodology, we will be adopting qualitative methodology such as participant observation, interview, case studies, focus group, and others that seek to understand phenomenon from the insider's perspective. That means that's why we depend on the words and the speeches of the individual or the groups that we are studying, yeah, because our data is text-based, yeah. So that's why it is interpretive paradigm. In terms of area, potential areas that we can use qualitative data on would be all this, yeah. Travel experiences. Experience is best portrayed by the feedback we get from our customers. So that's why when we interview them, we understand we do a thematic analysis on their words or their speeches. Then we will have more understanding about their travel experiences as a group. Okay. Hospitality experiences, host-guest interactions, tourism hospitality workers experiences, host residents experiences, customer service evaluation. So all these experiences and evaluation are subjective depending on what our respondents are really experiencing, really went throughout their holiday or throughout the time that they spent at our premise. Okay, so that's why we need to approach it using qualitative data, and this makes it interpretive paradigm. We do the investigation using deductive reasoning for positivist paradigm, or if we do quantitative approach. Okay, the deduction is a process of arriving at conclusion by interpreting the meaning of the results of the data analysis. Okay, it starts with the theoretical framework, so you have to have a theory. Formulating hypothesis, you have to have hypothesis, and logically deducing or concluding from the result of the study. Okay, so that's why this when we do positivist or quantitative methodology, this is where we use deduction reasoning. Okay, so we can be a study on anything that we know. Yeah, an example here is it is a known fact that all baby boomers love cruise tourism. So if John is a happy baby boomer, then we can conclude that he loves cruise tourism. Okay, so that's just the reasoning of it, the deduction we make from the known fact, from what we already know. Okay, so it involves logical thinking, yeah, because we generalize, we look at the general observation to make specific conclusion. The opposite of that, which is induction, relates to the interpretive paradigm that uses the induction as the logical reasoning. It is a process where we observe certain phenomena and on this basis arrive at conclusion. Okay, we observe, then we arrive. We do not start with any theory first. We observe first, then we make conclusion on the basis of that observation. There's no known fact before that, as in deduction. Okay, so we establish a general proposition and based on observed facts, and then we will derive, we will make a general conclusion from that. Yeah? For example, migration of youth to urban areas despite the establishment of homestay business in the village. Then we may conclude that village youth are not interested to be involved in their village's homestay business. Okay. So this is an induction reasoning relating to interpretivism paradigm. When we do research, the word research means we have to search again and again. So sometimes it can be going around, between all these activities in research, whereas where we start with observation or description of the phenomena, and we analyze it and we explain it, yeah. But then we will also need to make more observation in order to understand it further. Okay, so in induction or in qualitative methodologies, we start with A. Yeah, we make observation, we describe what we observe, and then we analyze it. And after analyzing it, we will try to explain it. Okay, that is for qualitative or induction, or what is the paradigm? Interpretivism. Okay. Whereas for deduction or quantitative method, we start with C first. We have to have a theory first, a hypothesis first. Then we will proceed to A, where we gather data to test the hypothesis. And then finally we proceed to B, where we analyze and test the hypothesis that we have against the data. So remember these two, yeah, induction, qualitative or interpretive, or deduction, quantitative, positivist. All right, looking at classification of research, research can be scientific, social, or social science. Okay, social science, scientific research means we're looking at like what we normally study in the lab, yeah, about medicine, about chemistry, about physics, yeah. It is conducted within the rules and conventions of science-based logic and reason, and on systematic examination of evidence. Okay, so research can be replicated for similar conclusion. Whereas for social science, we use methods and traditions of social science, yeah, which deals with people and their social behavior. And people are less predictable than non-human phenomena. Okay, so when we are looking at scientific, pure science research, we're looking at, doing things in the laboratory, adding chemicals, so we know that this chemical added to this chemical will create a certain reaction, yeah, because there's no variability there. It is all can be predictable. Whereas social science, the problem with social science is when we deal with people, in tourism, hospitality, and event, we always have to deal with people. We have to deal with customers. We have to deal with our employees. We have to deal with the government. We have to deal with NGOs. We have to deal with so many different type of stakeholders. You remember the word stakeholders? So they are people, and you have to deal with them and their behaviors. Okay, so human being a social animal, we are always dynamic in our behaviors. We change a lot. Okay, so when we change a lot, we become less predictable. Okay, so that's why social science research is different than science research. Limitation to scientific research or all this laboratory research is you cannot study phenomena that is complex, okay? Because it is difficult to do that, to observe that, yeah? And so if you try to understand a complex phenomena, the problem could be what you do is not easy for future researcher to follow or to replicate. Okay, and also you cannot control interaction between research and subjects. Researcher will interact with the subject. Yeah, so sometimes we also have the difficulties for measurement when we try to do scientific research. So how do we manage our research? Conan Foster has proposed the following. We have to have, first of all, writing skills. Okay, because there's a specific way to do a report on a research. Okay, you have to have an abstract, introduction, literature review, methodology section, analysis section, discussion section, implication section, and finally recommendation for future research section. So there are steps, yeah, and you have to learn these steps through academic writing course. Okay, so if you have opportunity to do academic writing course, I would recommend that you do it. Of course, you have to also learn all the methodology out there and try and have skills to implement each one of them effectively if you have to. Yeah, you have to have computer access and skills. Of course, these days nobody can do anything without a computer. In fact, some people are so dependent on their smartphone rather than just computer alone. Yeah, so all the digital technology has to be there too, and we have to know how to use it. Time and travel management skill. Time, because when we do research, we cannot delay the report of the research, because if we delay, then maybe the data that we have is no longer relevant, is outdated. Yeah, so you need to, as far as possible, finish within the times that you have promised your funder when you do your proposal. So if it is 1 year, after 1 year, you have to report. If it's a long-term research, 2 years, after 2 years, you have to report. So time is very important. Travel management skill. This is important because in order to not delay your research report, you have to be able to solve any problems that you encounter within the process. Yeah, so you have to have this skill as well. And you need to also have interpersonal skill. This is very important also when we talk about social science. In tourism, hospitality, and event, you have to interact with many people in order to get your data. You have to ask permission from certain authorities in order to get your data. So this requires a very good interpersonal skill, how we deal with people. Okay, if we do not know how to deal with people, it becomes very difficult for us to do a social science research. Okay. In tourism or hospitality or event or any research per se, there's also the issue of ethics. We cannot do a research by just plowing through all the ethical issues. Yeah, we have to take into consideration whether what you're doing it ethically or not. Okay. So ethics can relate to the issue of voluntarism. Did the participant or respondent participated voluntarily? Did they say yes voluntarily, or did you force them? Yeah, that's an issue. Yeah, because it's an ethical issue. Did the participant give an informed consent to put their names or their organization or their business name out there in your report? You have to also take that into consideration. Okay, they have to give an informed consent before you do something related to their names or their business or their organization. We also have to understand as a researcher that if the respondent says, no, I don't want to participate, you cannot pursue them any further. You have to go and try and get another respondent. Okay, they have the right to refuse. They have the right to say no and not participate in your research, and you cannot force them. They have the right to withdraw from the research. Yeah, for example, there have been you are doing some qualitative research, qualitative observation on some homestay operators or some hotel operators. But in the middle of your research, they say, okay, we cannot do this anymore. We want to withdraw from participating in your research. You cannot force them to stay. You can try to persuade them, but definitely you cannot put any kind of force to make them stay. Yeah, or any kind of threat to make them stay. Yeah, that is not ethical. And also, they deserve the right not to be deceived regarding any aspect of the research. That's why before we approach our respondent, our subjects, we have to explain to them exactly what we are doing and how their participation can help us in achieving what we are doing. Okay, so ethics is a very important aspect that we have to consider throughout the research, not just at the end of the research, but from the get-go, from the beginning. Before you start your research, you already have to think about all these issues. Also, the right not to be harmed. That's also an important ethical consideration during any stage of the research. Yeah, so you have to make sure that they are protected in every sense. Not just sexually or psychologically, but also physically. They cannot be harmed as they are participating in your research. Yeah, and the right to have any personal information or data being hidden. Yeah, so that's why when we do research, we have to promise them anonymity. Being anonymous means we do not indicate their name, their location, or their by location I mean address, or their pictures or whatever that can pinpoint their detail, their personal detail. Yeah, that's why we promise them anonymity, and then only they participate. Okay, even in the report, we do not disclose any personal information about our respondent. We also have to understand that our respondent can request our research data or research output or research report at any time. Yeah, if they want to see what we write about them, then they have the right to do so. We cannot say no. Yeah? Tourism researchers' ethical responsibilities to participants is also to protect any kind of intrusion, yeah, to the respondent. Protect them. Basically, we want our respondent to be safe, to be happy, so that they can, be freely giving us information that they have in a happy and safe situation. Yeah. Any kind of physical, psychological, legal, or any other kind of harm also should not be exposed to our respondent. Yeah, we should not cause them any psychological, physical, legal, or other harm. It should be voluntary. This is actually the same as the last slide. Yeah, anonymity, which I have already mentioned. Yeah, and any potential deception or covert research. Yeah, so covert research here means secret. You tape them in secret, or you you observe them in secret without their consent. That is covert, and it is not ethical to do that. Yeah, maybe you observe them first, and then you tell them later, and if they say yes, you can use the data. If not, You cannot use the data, okay? Why researchers need to be ethical? It is very important to be ethical because we need to protect our research participants from harm. We need to ensure our standing and our reputation in the scientific community. Yeah, and also we need to ensure that the scientific community image is being protected. Yeah, and we need to ensure that the research findings are derived in a morally and professionally responsible way. Yeah, so we don't want to do anything that can cause any ethical issues later. Yeah, because it could land you in court. People can sue you. So it is not how you say worth it to do anything that can land us in court. Okay. That's all that we have for this week. I will be giving you more information later on about this subject matter. Okay. So in the meantime, take care and stay healthy.